Doug from TMW Off-Road here today. Customer just dropped off this CanAm X3 with some front end issues, making some noises, some pops, and today we're going to solve all that. We're going to take apart the front end and install our TMW Bulkhead Gusset kit and see if we can tighten up all those loose holes, get rid of some of those bent bolts, and get this thing back on the road. Alright, here's our Bulkhead Gusset kit that we're going to install today. You see it comes with the main bulkhead here. This installs in the front and it captures all the main front arm points. One of the main benefits to our bulkhead kit versus some of the other guys that have copied us is these corners are, if you look through the center, it's all one complete web through the center of our gusset kit instead of like little tabs that just connect the front and back, or bolts that are bolted together. And this makes it one solid unit and it keeps it from flexing and twisting. A lot of the other gusset kits guys will install to save a little bit of money, and then they'll come back later and we'll end up swapping those out and putting something that's a little bit more sturdy in there. All your hardware, everything's grade 10.9 fasteners. We got your new 12mm bolts. Basically everything you need to install this kit is here, and we're going to walk you through it. Alright, we got some tools here. We got a T30, a T20, and a 10mm wrench. We're going to show you guys how to pull the hood off of a CanAm X3. Underneath this hood, if you look underneath here, there's some little tabs, plastic tabs that stick off the firewall, and underneath there's a little T20, and you just take a couple of those bolts out. There's a little weird socket back here behind the headlight you got to pop off, and we'll show you how to do that. Okay, on the back side of the headlight, there's this little, you can kind of see it, but there's this little screw, and on the end of it's got kind of like a little socket. It's got a little tiny retaining cap right here, and on the inside, close to the radiator, there's a little bolt you take off. Take that bolt off, the top of the cap slides back, and you can pop the socket out. So we're going to do that for you real quick. And you see that little socket popped out right there. So now the headlight is free from the radiator bracket. If you're not careful and you start yanking on the hood, you can break the radiator bracket that holds that headlight in place. Also, don't forget to unplug your headlights, the little plug right there. Just pop those loose before you start pulling on the hood so you don't damage any of the wiring. There's two of them for each side. We're going to pop the hood loose now. There's some little clips right here that are kind of stubborn sometimes. Sometimes you got to twist a little bit and yank. You don't want to break them, so underneath, try to squeeze them and get them loose as best you can. This car's equipped with some limit straps. We're gonna go ahead and loosen those up right now safely before we try to get these shocks off. That way no one loses a finger. Yeah, you can see the paper thin factory gusset and see how bent that is. Doesn't take too many miles of use to get these things flexing and moving.
Inside the place when I'm gone, telling all the reasons I to go to hell in so long. I see some more singing, oh, the hell is you? Oh, you're coming through, holding up the minutes.
So if your car is used and you're installing this gusset kit, check your bushings. If your bushings have a lot of play in them like these do, we can sell you a set of Delrin bushings to replace the factory ones that'll last longer and tighten up any loose pivot point. On this car you can see we replaced the factory worn out bushings with some brand new Delrin bushings. Makes it super nice so that now there's no wiggling, movement. Tightens everything up, so even though we're putting a gusset kit on, it's going to be way tighter than before. If your bushings are shot, get them changed while you have it apart. It's so much easier than trying to take it apart a month after you just installed your gusset kit. And they are for sale at tmwoffroad.com. These two gold bolts here you're going to want to leave tight, and then we're going to cut these bolts off the bottom here so that you can put your new bolts in from the front. This allows you, this is something that we came up with years ago when we first started making gusset kits for the X3. It allows us to not remove the front diff while installing a gusset kit. Also, something to note on the smart lock, you're not gonna be able to get the upper bolts out. So you're gonna wanna cut those off with a cutoff wheel as well. This gusset kit does work with the smart lock as well, but this car just happens to not have a smart lock diff in it. But everything clears and works with the smart lock. It's just you have a little bit less room, and on the upper bolts, they don't slide right out. You do have to cut those out.
In the morning, police knocking at my door. For better know the reason, see me going back. And then they come and do what telling me just get on my floor. Even though I'm on my floor, put the gun to my head. You know the reason that I'm holding all the trees. And I got a lot of weed, they be bothering me with them full praise. In the mood, singing who the hell is you? Oh, you coming through, holding up the innocent.
Alright, sometimes we get asked why we do gusset kits on the front end of the CanAm X3. This is why. The factory holes are sloppy from the beginning, but that slop allows the bolts to slide hammer around here and make them really big. And sometimes the frames fracture and crack. This one here is just kind of old itself out. As you can see, our gusset kit that we install, made of 4130 Chromoly, is a lot tighter to the bolt. So it takes up all that space when we bolt this on, and it has a plate that goes back behind the diff that also captures the back side. So it'll tighten up these holes, tighten up the whole front end. Your car will drive better, it'll be safer, you'll have less chance of breaking bolts and having a big accident on the trail. Set the gusset kit up here. We've used a 5/16 drill bit. We've drilled out all the holes. Now we're going to pull it back off and get it lined up with the arms and start getting everything put back together. Guys, this is our double shear lower rear AR mount for the X3. Comes in the gusset kit, and if you look at this plate, this is how I've got it set up, and this is how it's supposed to be correctly installed, with this portion of it facing forward toward the front of your vehicle. When these holes are lined up properly with this lower support plate, you can see the center makes a perfect circle. And so when you slide your tube in, it's nice and tight, it's a perfect circle. If you have this installed incorrectly, it'll look like this, and it has a sloppy, you see how much plate is when the two holes are lined up. This is the rear portion of the gusset. The newer ones have a little hole right here to indicate that that's the rear of the gusset. The original ones do not have that hole, but it's the same plate, same strength. And if you guys get that flipped around backwards, it will be a nightmare to install. So make sure you find the front of your gusset before you install it.
This is where I drop these arms right on my face. Alright, come back forward. Right there.
All right, we got our front gusset kit going on. This is the main structure of the whole gusset kit, is this front bulkhead that we install. Some other companies have little bumper things that bolt on. They call them bulkheads. This is what a real bulkhead is. It's a structure piece that holds the upper and lower A-arms together. It's a double sheared. It's made from chromoly, and it makes it so the front end is extremely strong and gets rid of almost all the weak points on the front end where these A-arms attach. All right, on the back side of the gusset kit, we have these chromoly plates that sandwich the frame. So you're basically bolting this on the back side of the frame, and it sandwiches the factory frame between two pieces of chromoly, and that way your holes stay tight, front and back. Use your 5/16 bolts here, bolt them in. Do have the tires turned all the way like you're making a full right turn, which allows you space up in here because the rack moves out of the way and you can barely slide that bolt in. So you have to turn the tires all the way toward the passenger side like you're making a right turn when installing the passenger side bolt, and then the opposite when installing the driver's side. Gusset, we didn't tighten up our main bolts. That's because there's the bumper piece that goes on the front there, but we do want to push those bolts in when tightening up the smaller bolts that hold the main gusset in place. That makes sure that when you are done, that all your A-arm bolts are in the proper position and you don't get surprised when installing your bumper that your gusset is crooked and you have to take everything back apart. So please put all 4 of your A-arm bolts in, tighten up those little 5/16 bolts, and then pull them back out and slide your bumper on. Okay, we reused the factory bolts on the bottom lower mount. We just leave them sticking out of the frame. And we slide everything together, and it saves us from dealing with the skid plate. One thing to be careful of is to make sure that you don't use a flat washer right here. There's already enough strength with the two, because you have the little gusset strap, you have the gusset itself, and the nut, so you don't need a washer right here. And if you do put a washer on here, your nuts will not stay tight. They will keep coming loose because you're not into the nylock enough. Please use Loctite on all these connections. It helps everything stay tight as well. Here's another look at the fish plate brace on the back of the frame, where you're, so you can see where we are. You got the gusset kit installed here on the back of the frame where we slid those fish plates in. We got them all tightened up. Everything looks good. Increases the strength a ton having those in there. Some of the frames have, like the Rock Crawler Edition, and some of them have a thicker plate right there already. If this plate is a problem, there's already a lot of factory thickness in there, you can leave that out if you want to, but most of them, like this 17 we're working on right now, it definitely needs that extra strength. Also, this is a good view for you because when you have the smart lock, it's a little tighter and it's harder to see what the back side of that looks like. So be sure to reconnect your sway bar links. This is a good time to upgrade your sway bar links. They're really a weak spot on the factory suspension. So if you want to install like a nice set of shock therapy sway bar links, this would be a good time. Shock Therapies is the only one we recommend because it has the larger size heims, and it also has the brace that goes inside the arm, so it doesn't tear the back side of the arm apart when you're beating on it. Okay, plug your wires back in. Make sure all your bolts are tight. Get your hood back on there. The most important part is to take time and just go over every nut and bolt. Make sure that everything is tight and safe before you start driving it off-road.